everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrea. It's nice to have you guys here. Today I have a kind of frequently asked questions about being in university, either as an undergrad or as a grad student. And these are the questions that I just find I get asked a lot, either as a teacher by my undergrads or as a grad student, or now former grad student. I'm still making that mental adjustment that I'm no longer a grad student. So sometimes I get asked questions by other grad students who are still in an earlier stage of their grad school journey. So the first one, if you are a new student and or if you are a first generation student, if the whole just academic environment in general is very overwhelming to you, you are not alone. I teach a lot of undergrads, many of whom are first generation students themselves. I know that there are a lot of very unique challenges to that demographic. I am not a first generation student, so I can't speak from firsthand experience, but I have known a lot over the years. And I definitely know what it feels like to be a new student, at a new university or in a new program. I think my advice is, the first thing is to be aware of the student support services on your campus. Most universities that I am aware of, at least here in the US, have some kind of student services office, office of student success. A lot of the bigger universities will also have groups, whether it's kind of like a student-led club or a more formal university formed activity group. They will have some groups geared towards first generation students, new students, students of different ethnic or minority backgrounds who maybe feel even more alone and isolated on campus because they don't see that many people who, are from the same background and maybe recognize some of the same challenges that they're going through. I know that my university is a pretty big one, so we have lots of clubs, groups, organizations, but they're not always very well advertised. So I feel like each individual student has to do a certain amount of research to find them, but just know that there probably is a group that will help make you feel more at home and more a part of the campus environment. You just might have to take a little bit more time to find those groups, but they are there. And most universities do have, like I said, some kind of student services, office of student success, that will probably have even more information on these things that you can go in and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. What resources do you have available? So definitely don't be afraid to be a bit proactive and seek out some of those resources. They will have, I'm looking at my notes again, they will have resources on how to find info about scholarships, grants, how to navigate campus. A lot of them will have like university adjustment workshops or like meetings, like how to adjust to a higher workload and things like that. I think for undergrads, a huge shock when they're coming from high school is in the primary and secondary education environment, your teachers tell you what to do. And at the university level, you're expected to read the syllabus and follow instructions, and your teacher isn't going to give you instructions on every little thing. I sometimes still do because I teach writing classes, and as a teacher I try to make things as easy and as not confusing as possible for my students, but not every teacher is like that. So it's the responsibility is on you to ask questions. And most people will be really happy and friendly and helpful with answering those questions, but you have to ask them in the first place. It's perfectly normal to need some extra help getting around. And don't be afraid to ask your classmates, like, how do you find this building? How do you find that building? Another question that I've heard and that I did get in an Instagram question thingamajigger is talking about what to wear and like, is there an unofficial dress code? And this person is a grad student, so I think as an undergrad, no. I don't seem to notice my students at least following any kind of dress code. Now I know at certain universities there are like expectations for what you wear, and your university will have spelled that out. ASU is very casual. All the undergrads are all about the whole athleisure, so everyone looks like they're going to the gym or a yoga class before or after class, and only probably about 30% of them actually are. As a grad student, you're balancing teaching and needing to look professional with being a student yourself and having, maybe a 3-hour seminar you have to sit through in the afternoon. I will say that on the days when I was doing my coursework, on the days that all I had to do was attend a class of my own, I definitely was way more casual. On days that I was teaching, I tried to dress up a little bit more. That being said, ASU is really casual. It's really hot for most of the year, so like no one is dressing in full suits or anything that formal. No one's wearing tweed blazers. I wish we could. So it's still pretty casual, but if you go to school in a different climate, your kind of unofficial grad student department dress code might be a little bit different. So I always say you can never be overdressed to a certain extent. You can only be underdressed. So dress maybe a little bit more formally than you think you need to, and then just kind of take a look at your classmates and your fellow instructors and follow their lead. Every university seems to have its own kind of unofficial, not dress code, but just way that they dress that's kind of established. That being said, I was absolutely the student, in my department who was walking around in heels back in the day, not so much now. Definitely still have cute shoes. I always get comments on my shoes, and I always get comments on my Ted Baker handbags. I feel like I'm known as the girl with the Ted Baker handbags. So there are usually like certain codes and expectations, but you can also break those to a certain extent and be you. And I always recommend, like, at the end of the day, you should still be comfortable. Another question that I get a lot is, and I'm combining this with the next one for sake of time, what should I study and how do you know if a program is right for you? One of my professors way back when I was first starting undergrad made a good point of you should study what you love to do, not what you love to study. And I feel like a lot of students give up on programs that would actually be very good for them because they don't enjoy studying some of the classes they have to take, but they would really enjoy the original career they were going for. Maybe there's a degree that you really want, there's a career that you're really interested in, but the degree requires organic chemistry or something that you really struggle with, and maybe you have to take a few times before you finally pass it, but you'll never actually really use that in the career. A lot of professions are either really awful to study for, but then the profession is totally different, or it's really fun to study for, but then the profession itself is actually really quite boring, or more difficult, or not enough life-work balance, or whatever is kind of important to you. I always recommend, if you have an idea of a career, if you can shadow someone who does that career, or just find people online and kind of get to know them a bit. These days with Instagram and YouTube, a lot of people, you can kind of see behind the scenes of a lot of different jobs. If the job itself looks like something that's right for you, you'll get through the studies you have to do. It's not worth it to waste time studying something that you love to study, but then is not going to be the right career for you. So I always recommend, when you're trying to decide what to study, trying to decide what degree to get, whatever, start with the ending. Where do you want to end up? What do you want to be and do with the rest of your life? And then talk to people who are doing that and find out what they did to get to where they are. Do you need a certain college degree? Obviously, if you want to be a lawyer, you're going to have to go to law school. There's no getting around that. But if you're really interested in social media and marketing and PR, okay, there are degrees in some of those areas, but would it be easier and cheaper for you to just work your way up? I don't know, because I'm not an expert on those fields, but talk to people who are and figure out, like, is the degree and the money and time you'll spend really worth it? Or are you going to end up in an entry-level job anyway where your degree isn't as valued, but also have all of the student debt on top of it? I feel like this is a completely separate video. Let me know if you want me to talk about that at more length, and I can. Another point I get from undergrads, but that I feel like grad students also need to be better at advocating for themselves and taking advantage of: office hours. What is the point of office hours, and do I have to go to them? So pretty much every university, I don't know how this works internationally, so if any of my international students could let me know in the comments, I really would love to know if your professors have to hold office hours. Most US universities, every instructor, whether that's a teaching assistant up through the most tenured faculty members, they all have to hold a certain number of office hours every week, and that's based on how many classes they teach. So because I teach more than my university, it's 2 hours for every class you teach, but never more than 4. So I do 4 hours of office hours. So that's 4 hours a week that I am guaranteed to be available to my students. For me, half of those have to be in person in my actual official office in my department building, but the other half can be in an alternate space. So I could do that like at the library, at the Starbucks, at the MU if I really wanted to. For me, I do them online because my classes are hybrid classes, so half the work we do is online anyway. So I just make myself available 2 hours every week online. And so those are hours that my students know I will be at my desk, at my computer, checking my email. And if they send me an email, they will get an immediate response as quickly as I can draft one. Whereas if they email me outside of office hours, it could take up to 24 hours for me to respond to their email. Some professors don't like doing office hours, and some professors will do everything they can, and some TAs as well, will do everything they can to discourage students from attending office hours. So their office hours might be at really awkward times. I feel like if you have a teacher who has their office hours at like 8 a.m., it's probably a sign they don't actually want you to come in. Whereas I try to make mine in the middle of the afternoon, as close to class period time as possible, so that usually if they have time before or after class, there will be an office hour of mine at some point in the week. So sometimes teachers don't want you to come, but I have found that whether as an undergrad or as a grad student, every time I've gone into one of my professor's office hours, they've always just kind of been sitting there. I've never had an experience of walking in and they're like deep in concentration on something really important and act really, irritated that I've interrupted them. Instead, it's always been as soon as they see me at their door, they're happy to see me and they're happy to have someone to talk to. I think because most of us prefer to do our work at home anyway, so our office hour time really is time just for our students. So I always tell my students, and I just went through this on Thursday with the 2 classes that I met for the first time this semester, I am there for them. I am only sitting there for them. And if I didn't have to have those office hours, there are a million other things I would be doing. So I literally I'm doing something to kill the time, but like there's really nothing more important to me than helping a student if they happen to come to my office hours. So it's definitely worth it if you do have a teacher that's really encouraging you to use office hours, whether that's as an undergrad or as a grad student. I'd say it's even more important as a grad student. Having time to meet with my professors and talk about my research, talk about seminar papers, talk about conference papers, anything. The more that they're getting to know you as well, it also makes it easier for them to write letters of recommendation. I feel like that works for every student, no matter what level you are. I had some of my best breakthroughs on my work in office hours. So if you're limiting yourself to only emailing or only talking to them in class, you are missing out on really beneficial help that they can give you. Definitely take advantage of office hours. Another question that I got on Instagram is, what are the differences between the main degrees, so a BA, MA, PhD, and what should I know if I'm transitioning from one to the other? When you're transitioning from a bachelor's level to a master's level, or from a master's to a PhD, there are a lot of similarities to the one you did before, but it's just harder. I feel like if you've completed one, you can definitely complete the other. If you completed a bachelor's degree, you can absolutely complete a master's. If you've completed a master's, you can absolutely complete the PhD. Some people try to go straight from a bachelor's to a PhD. I've seen people do it. I've seen them be successful. It is definitely a much bigger adjustment and transition. I think the best thing to do to help you with transitioning is get to know other people in that program. So if you are an incoming PhD student, get to know the other PhD students, especially ones who are maybe a year or 2 or even 3 years ahead of you. Ask them questions. What's their advice? Getting to know people in your specific program and asking them questions about what is the program like, what should you know, who are the good people to know, who are maybe the people to avoid. Every department I feel like has that professor that you probably are just better off never having anything to do with them. And these are not things you will ever be told at the like informational interviews when you do a campus visit before you accept your position, but there's usually a lot of stuff like that that comes out once you are officially a student there. So keep your ear to the ground, listen to all of that, take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes it's just gossip, but definitely start like figuring out those sorts of things. So at the end of the day, don't overthink it. Don't build it up to be bigger than it actually is. I mean, a PhD especially is huge, and you have every right to be nervous and overwhelmed, but don't blow that up in your mind even more. Just start getting to know people, talk to them, communicate with other grad students online, on Twitter, on Instagram, hashtag PhD life, hashtag grad school. You will find people talking about all of the things that you're stressed and worried about. I wish I'd been aware of those hashtags and following them and just more active online from the beginning of my grad school journey. It was really kind of partway through my PhD that I started getting more involved in that, and I feel like I was really missing out in those early years. And then the final question I got is, how do you deal with homesickness if you're moving away? There's no easy answer for this, and it's different for everyone, but I would say when the times that I lived away from home, whether that was when I was going to school down in Tucson, which is only an hour and a half away, or the times that I was spending a whole summer overseas doing study abroad, regular FaceTime or Skype calls with my family when I was overseas. I think I FaceTime with my mom almost every day, and so that kept me from missing her too much because I was still seeing her and talking to her every day. If you are living close enough that you can visit, scheduling regular visits home, so whether that's on your breaks from university, if you've got like long weekends, or maybe it's just the main semester breaks, but having those planned and scheduled so that you know, okay, I've got X number of days before I'll be home again. That can also help you deal with the homesickness. I think bringing some things that remind you of home can really help, so having pictures of people or places that remind you of home if you're moving to like a completely different climate. And like I know if I ever do move to the UK, my home there will have pictures of the Arizona desert because I don't think I could just leave it completely. And then I think finally my last tip for homesickness is to just get involved and start creating a new life for yourself in your new home. Meet new people, get out and explore your new town, find places that can kind of become your place. So find your new, favorite coffee shop or favorite place to get a drink after work or after school. Find your new kind of fun places, cool places that become like yours. In all the years that I lived in Tucson, in the beginning it was really hard because I kept wanting to come back up to Phoenix, and it was difficult because it was so close. But once I started making friends down there, I had more reason to stay on the weekends. And once I started finding like places to hike and restaurants to try and things like that, it just became, I wasn't looking forward to the weekend to get back up to Phoenix. I was looking forward to the weekend to do more fun things in Tucson. And as a result, Tucson kind of became the first place that I lived that felt like mine and not like my family's, because everywhere else I'd lived with my family. And so Tucson kind of still is my town. Find that wherever you have moved to and explore things and make it your own. And that's kind of, I think, one of the best things for dealing with the homesickness is just putting some roots down in that new place. This video has gotten really long, but I hope this was helpful. I hope some of these questions and my answers are helping you. Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions or if you have additional advice to add to my advice. I'm not sure if there's going to be a new video on Friday. I'm waiting for a Sephora Playbox. So if there's no video on Friday, It didn't arrive on time, but that might go up over the weekend. Just fair warning. And yeah, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye. And I made it before the battery died. Whew.